Hello. Okay. 12 months ago, I heard that horrible sentence coming out of my specialist's mouth. Well, this is never easy. It's funny the things that you remember clearly, and that moment, of all the moments, is forever etched in my mind. It was the moment my stomach sunk, because I intuitively knew I was turning another corner, down a very dark alley. The same way I knew deep down that first time I felt sharp pain in my pelvis when I was trying to fasten my skinny jeans, and that knowing internal voice said, that's something serious. I had gone into that consultation feeling nervous. I had told my lifeline, my sister, not to bother taking any more time off work to come with me. It wasn't going to be a significant meeting. I had had a PET scan 2 days earlier, which I'd vomited through the entire preparation time, and it was only with an Olympic yogi mental effort that I'd laid still during that scan. I promptly vomited the moment it was over, and the entire way home and all through the evening. I was convinced that the scan was a total mess, that I'd failed, and that was why I'd been asked to come back in. It was a really important scan, as it was a planning scan for a second round of radiation. I had already completed 6 weeks of radiation only 5 months earlier, and I'd been advised that another round of radiation would come with significant risks, and therefore a second round would have to be extremely exact. It was my last option on the short list of current curative treatments for ovarian cancer. After a brief, blurred explanation about why radiation treatment was now being withdrawn, my internal self was screaming, I don't care about damage to my bowel or my internal organs. Just give me the radiation if I'm going to get to live. But of course, I didn't say that. She quickly wrapped up the uncomfortable conversation and sent me across the hospital to the consulting rooms of my oncologist, who would now be in charge of my future treatment. I flopped into the chair and I looked up to her hopefully, hoping it was a mistake or at least expecting some words of comfort. But instead, she just led with, so what painkillers do you want? I asked what other treatment I could do. And she said to me, well, we can do second-line chemo. If you want. It has a really low success rate and it might be more pain than it's worth. I told her I wanted to do that palliative treatment. I was secretly hoping I would be that minority that happened to respond to that treatment. I couldn't believe it sounded like she was suggesting I give up. That treatment was administered every 4 weeks, and my condition was bad and had deteriorated quickly. Believe it or not, looking at me now, I was losing weight rapidly. I couldn't eat, I didn't want to eat, and I couldn't keep any food down. I had no energy. I spent my days between laying in bed and laying on the couch. I was taking painkillers constantly. But my mind was active and I was desperate. I researched everything. I started considering buying into the alternative ideas that I'd heard over the preceding months. Those frustrating, unquantified conversations like, my aunt read on the internet that eating apricot kernels cures cancer. Or cancer thrives in an acidic environment, so to cure your cancer, you must go on an alkaline diet. Suddenly I remembered Jim Steins had done a coffee enema every day during his treatment for brain cancer. The first time I heard many of these things, especially the apricot kernel thing, I thought, wow, how utterly ridiculous. Who would believe that? But when you're staring down that dark barrel, suddenly, in the absence of something else, trying to force an apricot kernel down or a coffee enema up, if you get to live, it doesn't seem like such a bad risk. For the record, I never consumed an apricot kernel or a coffee enema, and I'm not advocating for that. But I do understand the desperation to live, and this can be an extremely vulnerable place to be. I do believe a positive attitude will help, but I don't like feeling like your attitude will ultimately dictate your outcome. It's not your fault if you become terminal. I will confess, I did try the Alkaline Diet. It's pretty easy when I could barely eat anyway, and I figured it couldn't hurt. It didn't hurt, but it didn't help. I searched online furiously. I came across many alternative treatments, the most heartbreaking of which was reading an account of a woman who had paid thousands of dollars for an alternative treatment at a private clinic. She bankrupted herself pursuing this treatment and passed away, suffering immense pain shortly after. This story terrified me to my core. I was so desperate, and I got it. I was open to and trying alternative options, and I was ready to go down the alternative roads. But equally, if dying young was my fate, I wanted to do so without causing myself more harm or heartbreak. Amongst my exhaustive research was clinical trials. I had erroneously believed if there was an appropriate clinical trial available, my oncologist would have referred me to it. This was not the case. I endeavoured to undertake research into available trials myself, but I was stumped. My first port of call was the Cancer Council website. They have a tab where you can search open trials in Australia. I did this, and just typing in ovarian cancer returned over 32 pages. Even just reviewing that first page, the listed trials may as well have been in Chinese. I mean, I consider myself reasonably intelligent, but I couldn't understand what they were for or if I would qualify. So I reached out. I hope everyone here has a nurse liaison like I have. I called her to discuss my desire to investigate trials, and I flagged a couple I thought might be something. We reviewed them over the phone, and even she confessed she couldn't decode some of the language. She promised to refer me to an oncologist research fellow within the organisation, and she set up an appointment. At that first appointment, she presented me with 2 current immunotherapy trials, not specific to ovarian cancer, but were seeking a range of cancer types. I'd heard immunotherapy was a new thing in cancer treatment, but I didn't know much more than that. I qualified for the trial on paper, but there were no openings. I could nominate to go on the wait list, and I went home with a lot of reading to do. There was no promise that a position would open on either of the trials or that I would actually qualify, but I felt better knowing that I was at least pursuing another option. Clinical trials are an interesting concept. Volunteering to be a human guinea pig is terrifying. The unknown, like a cancer diagnosis, drills right down to your core. When I first considered this, my high school science training kicked in. And my biggest concern was that I didn't want to get a placebo. I can appreciate the placebo or a control group is absolutely required in a scientific trial because science is going to cure cancer, not apricot kernels. I thought about the women who'd come before me and the women who will come after me. I knew that entering a trial might not save my life, but it might help save a life in the future. And that was really important to me. I'm sure those of you out there today would agree. As much as we can find positives and learnings in the experience we've been on with our cancer journey, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I continued to get second opinions and chase alternative options, and after 3 months waitlisted for those 2 trials at the Clinical Trial Centre, I finally got a call back that a spot had become available on the Phase 1A, 1B open-label, multi-dose, dose escalation and expansion study to investigate the safety, pharmacokinetics and anti-tumour activities of the anti-PD-1 monoclonal antibody BGB-A317 in subjects with advanced tumours trial. So you can see what I mean about the language. Of course, at another crossroad of decision, the weight was heavy. I was nervous this trial wouldn't be effective, as all the treatments I had undergone to date had been. I was nervous I'd become a mutant or end up with further health complications, as this was the first stage of trialling the drug in humans. I was scared that if I consented, my participation in a trial would exclude me from participating in future trials. I was scared that if I entered the trial, I was signing the rights of my body away. I already felt so betrayed by my body, but I was scared that consenting to a trial, I'd be giving away my freedom to live how I choose for whatever time I may or may not have left. I asked all my questions, and I went home, and then I came back with more questions. I agonised over that decision with the clock ticking. I decided to take the risk and go for it. I must admit, one of the influencing factors was that in this case, the trial I was offered was a phase 1 trial, which means there was no control group and everyone gets the dosage. And I have to admit that was a massive relief for me. As for signing my rights away, the fear turned out to be grossly incorrect. Consenting to the trial is no more onerous than standard treatment. You can eat, you can drink, you can live how you choose. For me, I have regular blood tests, treatment every 3 weeks, and CT scans every 9 weeks. In fact, you probably end up with a higher level of care in a trial environment as you meet with your doctor before every treatment and discuss how you're going. You retain your rights. Like everything, it is your choice, and you may withdraw at any time. Whilst I have treatment every 3 weeks, there is flexibility. One friend I've made over the course of my treatment is doing so well now that she is planning a 5-week European summer holiday with one of her best mates, and the trial is able to accommodate that break. To complete my entry into the trial, I had to undergo certain physical tests to clear me for treatment and create a baseline. These included a CT scan, an eye test, a blood test, and a tumour biopsy. Only the biopsy was invasive, and it wasn't too bad as it was just a one-off. By the time I went to my first treatment, the emotion of it all overcame me. My condition had progressed that I couldn't even walk standing up straight. I just curled up into the fetal position in that treatment chair, and I did my best to hold back tears. I got home and I sobbed, a really guttural sob. It was a primal grief I'd never felt or expressed before, despite everything I'd been through, including having lost my parents in the years before my cancer diagnosis. I sobbed for what I'd gone through, and I sobbed for my grief that I was rapidly approaching death's door. But miraculously, only 10 days later, I stopped needing to take pain medication. My energy started to return, my appetite returned, and as you can see, I ate everything. 9 weeks after I commenced treatment, I had my first scan. The results? My tumour had reduced by more than 50%. That was the first good news I'd ever heard related to my illness, and I only continued to improve from there. My most recent scan in March showed 2 out of the 3 tumours from my baseline scan are no longer measurable, and the remaining tumour has reduced to just 1.5 centimetres. I am living as if I am not ill, and from where I was such a short time ago, it is truly a miracle. So I guess in conclusion I wanted to say, be your own advocate and don't expect someone to save you. Keep asking questions, keep searching for new trials. We are in a rapidly changing world, and if you can hold on until tomorrow, we are so close to more significant breakthroughs. I really want a cure for cancer, and it's my dream that everyone gets their miracle in their pursuit for life. Thank you.